Mathipus looked like a wide canyon revealing some of its shallow depths. The sea water flowing from the hole on the rock wall continued to pour into the lake. The fighting was over and almost everybody was now looking at the lake that was almost empty of water. Moments passed, the sea water began to fill up slowly the lake again. The passages had collapsed, blocking the entry of more water inside the remaining opened tunnels, clogged by mud, boulders, stones, logs, and other debris. The Sumiks, Mals, Werums, Nugas, Vamiths and Leonardo were still stunned at the sight of the receding lake, but they began to rejoice seeing it slowly rose up from the sea water that continued to pour in. They jubilated at their victory over the Mal. Servius and Mathipus was filled with voices of cheers. "You've done a great deed," Lakhiji remarked. Leonardo looked at the Nuga. He didn't know how to respond seeing the many bodies that laid on the other side of Mathipus, dark, colored, and white. Leonardo. He looked back and saw Lizzie and other Werums behind him. They were still holding their white arbalists resting on their sides. He came forward and held Lizzie's hand while staring her in the eyes. "I don't know how to thank you all for helping us. How did you know?" "Montha and Leva told us through Sidak's bird. Sidak was supposed to meet his bird in the woods, but when he did not show up, Montha and Leva were alarmed, for it was the first time that Sidak failed to come. Also, our birds could not find your elders, so we suspected something bad happened here." It was then that Leonardo remembered his friends and his mother who they failed to see under the lake bed. "We still have to find my mother, Carlo, Sidak, Cadio and the Mals." Lizzie just smiled at Leonardo as she gazed up the sky. "Look." Leonardo turned his head as to where Lizzie was staring at. Above them, flocks of Werums were heading towards the lake from the northwest as if they were thick locusts filling up the sky, while each held a body of a Mal. Cadio, Carlo, Sidak, his mother, Ginkgo, Harka and the others were with them. Carlo and Cadio were seeing their home from afar as the wind brushed onto their smiling faces. Sidak was being carried by Montha and Leva as Leonardo's heart was filled with gladness and cheer seeing the kind he grew up with, under the safe hands of the Werums. One by one, the Werums dropped the Mals onto the sides of Mathipus under the cheering and jubilating crowd of Sumiks, Ibiths, Nugas, and Vamiths. Leonardo pressed Lizzie's hand while he watched his friends and family carefully got to the ground. Elnirak sent the other Werums to search for the Mals. Leonardo looked at Elnirak, whose face was also filled with gladness as she turned towards him. "They are safe now. Everybody ought to live in peace. I wish you well, Leonardo. We will always be with you." Elnirak smiled and kissed Leonardo on the cheek. She glanced at her Werums and flew around the Mals while waving at them with a happy face. One by one, the Werums followed their queen. Sidak was hugging Montha and Leva as if not letting them go. "Don't go. You can stay here." Montha and Leva just smiled at him. The twins gave Sidak a kiss. "Wait. Can you not stay?" The twins looked back and at this point somebody kicked Sidak lightly at the back. Sidak saw Paula's face staring mad at him. He smiled at Cadio's sister. When he looked back, the twins had opened their wings and flew up to the sky while smiling and waving goodbye to him and the Mals. "I will see you again, Leonardo. Take care." Lizzie hugged Leonardo. He nodded and understood. Though the sun was still up, he knew that the Werums needed to be back in their faraway abodes before the sun totally sets. Darkness makes a Werum's body weak and prolonged exposure to darkness could make them die. Leonardo watched as Lizzie joined the remaining Werums that were flying around the Mals and the others to bid their farewell until everyone headed towards east following Elnirak and the others. Mathipus was filled with overwhelming joy with the jubilation of the Mals as they thanked the other kinds that many of them just saw for the first time. The Sumiks that they once feared were all attending to them and some were giving them water and food while the Nugas and the Vamiths gathered around Ginkgo, Harka and the other elders telling them of their stories at Hapa, Nosnev and Zireplada. Leonardo and Marcello joined the Mals as they swam to the already still and filled up lake on the other side. He first went towards Carlo, Sidak, Cadio, and to the other Mals, then proceeded to each wounded Ibiths and soldiers as they spoke to them with thanks and pride for what they did. Drund was just silently staring at Leonardo and he too was touched by the sight of the many races that had gathered around him. He was seeing his king and like Yugada, his admiration towards him ballooned. He took out the bloodied cloth handed to him by Yugada and this suddenly brought back the memories of the great general who gave his life for their king. He then looked at Leonardo once more and while closing his hand with the soft cloth he whispered to himself, "I will serve my king with my life like you did, General."